Good morning, everyone. Today, we're talking about something subtle but powerful, the behaviors that quietly lower our status, our influence, and the way people perceive us without us even realizing it. We often think status comes from titles, money, or charisma, but the truth is far more. Human status is shaped by how we make people feel about themselves and about us. And sometimes the behaviors that undermine us are the ones we casually repeat, unaware of the impact they carry. There's a quiet moment, one we rarely talk about. When you say something, share something, or take a step and immediately your eyes scan the room to see how people react. A raised eyebrow, a nod, a smile, a tiny hint of approval. Most people think this is harmless, but the truth is it drains your confidence faster than anything else. When you depend on validation, you send a message without speaking. I don't trust my own judgment unless you confirm it for me. And that single message lowers your status, your presence, and your emotional authority. Here's what makes it even more painful. People can sense when you're performing instead of standing in your truth. They can feel when your words come from fear instead of conviction. They can tell when you're waiting for them to clap before you believe in yourself. Validation dependence creates a quiet desperation. You start curating yourself, your voice, your opinions, your energy, just to fit the approval of others. You lose authenticity, you lose grounding, and without noticing, you give everyone around you the power to decide your worth. But here is the turning point, the moment you stop asking, do they approve? And start asking, do I approve? Your presence changes. People respect individuals who are anchored, who look inward for confirmation, who don't fold because someone disagrees. When your self-worth comes from within, the need for validation fades, and suddenly you're the one in the room who feels centered, calm, and unshakably confident. Self-validation isn't arrogance, it's emotional maturity. It's the quiet courage of saying, my voice matters even if nobody claps today. One of the most subtle ways people lower their status without even realizing it is by talking too much. Not because speaking is bad, but because talking without listening signals insecurity, not confidence. When someone dominates the conversation, interrupts, or rushes to respond, it quietly communicates, I need to prove myself. I'm afraid my silence won't be enough. My story matters more than yours. And people sense that. They feel unseen, unheard, and unvalued. Every time you overtalk, you shrink the emotional space around you, and with it, your influence. Listening, on the other hand, is a superpower. It makes people feel safe, respected, and understood. It sends a message that you're grounded enough to receive, not just perform. People naturally trust the person who listens deeply because listening creates connection, and connection builds status far more than words ever do. Think about the people you admire. They're not the loudest ones in the room. They're the ones who hold steady eye contact, who pause before speaking, who take in your words like they matter. They don't rush to fill silence. They use silence to understand. Talking can impress people for a moment. Listening influences people for a lifetime. When you talk less, people lean in. When you listen more, people open up. And when you balance the two with intention, you become someone others gravitate toward, not because you demand attention, but because you offer presence. True status doesn't come from having the best words. It comes from making others feel like their words matter too. There is a certain kind of apology that comes from courage. The kind that says, I value this relationship. I value accountability. I value growth. That kind of apology elevates your character. But then there's the other kind, the one we give away too easily, the one we offer automatically without thinking, without intention, without real responsibility. The one that slips out of our mouth not because we did something wrong, but because we've been conditioned to believe that taking up space is wrong. And that is the apology that quietly lowers your status. When you apologize for things that don't require an apology, Why for asking a question, lay for expressing a need, die for taking too long to reply, for existing in someone's way, for simply being human. You send a message. My presence is inconvenient. My needs are small. I'm afraid of disappointing you. People don't always register your words consciously, but energetically, they feel the insecurity behind them. Instead of appearing kind, you appear unsure. Instead of appearing respectful, you appear afraid. Over-apologizing teaches others how to treat you. If you constantly apologize, people begin to assume you are at fault even when you aren't. They start believing your needs are optional. Your voice becomes softer. Your place in the room becomes smaller. But when you begin to guard your apology, when you use it only when it matters, it becomes powerful again. People notice. Your words carry more weight. Your boundaries become clearer. Your self-respect becomes visible. And here's the truth. You don't raise your status by shrinking. You raise it by standing in your worth. Try replacing unnecessary apologies with truthful statements. Instead of, sorry for asking, say, thank you for explaining. Instead of, sorry for speaking up, say, I'd like to share something. Instead of, sorry for the delay, say, thank you for your patience. These small shifts change how people see you, and more importantly, how you see yourself. When you stop apologizing for existing, you step back into your power. There's a moment in every conversation where you feel the pull, the temptation to add just one more detail, one little story, or one harmless joke about someone who isn't in the room. It feels light, it feels entertaining, it feels bonding, but that moment is where your status quietly begins to fall. Gossip is one of the fastest ways to make people question your character, even if they never say it out loud. Because here's the truth, when you speak negatively about someone else, the people listening wonder what you say about them when they walk away. Gossip is a shortcut to false intimacy. It creates connection through tearing someone down instead of lifting anyone up. It gives a quick hit of superiority, but that high fades fast and leaves a long shadow. What most people don't realize is that gossip reveals far more about the speaker than the subject. It tells people, I'm insecure. Why need comparison to feel significant? I choose judgment over empathy. Well, I haven't mastered emotional discipline. And nothing lowers your status faster than showing you can't be trusted with someone else's reputation. Speaking negatively about others also steals something from you, your integrity. Every time you engage, even passively, you hand people evidence that your values are flexible, that they change depending on who you're talking to or what mood you're in. But here's the powerful part. When you rise above gossip, people feel it instantly. Your presence becomes safer. Your words carry more weight. Your energy becomes consistent. Someone who doesn't need drama or comparison to feel grounded. Being the person who refuses to speak negatively is not about being perfect. It's about being principled. It's about choosing clarity over chaos, character over entertainment. It's about honoring the truth that cutting someone else down never elevates you. Real influence is built by how you talk about people who aren't present. The higher your integrity, the higher your status, quietly, consistently, unmistakably. There's a split second in every difficult moment, a tiny emotional gap where your body tightens, your heart speeds up, and your mind prepares to defend itself. Most people rush through that moment without noticing it. They snap, they lash out, they shut down. They say the first thing their emotions hand them, and in that instant, their status drops. Reacting is instinct, responding is maturity. When you react immediately with anger, lie with defensiveness, lie with sarcasm, lie with blame, with emotional impulsiveness, you send a message, my emotions control me. And people lose trust in someone who cannot trust themselves. Reacting signals that you are easily triggered, easily moved, easily thrown off center. It shows that other people's words have more power over you than your own self-regulation. But responding, pausing even for a breath, communicates something entirely different. It says, I choose my behavior, I choose my tone, I choose my energy, and that level of emotional discipline instantly raises your status because it shows mastery, not volatility. People respect the person who stays calm when the room heats up. They listen more closely to the one who doesn't rush to defend or attack. They trust the one who can hold steady in discomfort. Responding doesn't mean silence. It doesn't mean suppressing emotions. It simply means you take a moment, just a moment, to decide what part of you is going to speak your fear or your wisdom, your impulsive or your intention, your insecurity or your integrity. The person who can pause is the person who can lead. The person who can breathe before speaking is the one who commands respect. The person who chooses their response instead of reacting blindly becomes someone others feel safe around. Your power is not in your reaction. Your power is in your pause. Boundaries aren't walls, they're clarity. Clarity about what you need, what you value, what you can give, and what you can't. And nothing lowers your status faster than ignoring boundaries, either your own or someone else's. When you ignore your own boundaries, you send a message that your needs don't matter. You say yes. When everything in you is screaming no, you let people interrupt you, overstep you, or take advantage of your kindness. You bend yourself to keep the peace, even if it costs you your emotional energy, and people pick up on that. When you don't honor your own lines, others stop honoring them too. Not because they are bad people, but because you've silently taught them that your limits are flexible, negotiable, or insignificant. Ignoring your own boundaries lowers your status because it shows uncertainty. Uncertainty about your worth, your voice, and your identity. But the opposite is also true. When you ignore other people's boundaries, you signal something equally damaging, a lack of emotional awareness, not listening when someone says they need space, overstaying your welcome, pushing topics they're uncomfortable with, taking more than you give. People remember how you treat their boundaries because boundaries are deeply tied to dignity. Respecting someone else's limit is one of the most profound ways to show you respect them. When you honor boundaries, yours and theirs, you communicate strength, self-respect, emotional intelligence, and maturity. You become someone who is safe to be around, someone people trust, someone with emotional gravity. And here's the truth: boundaries don't push people away. They teach people how to treat you. They create healthier relationships, clearer conversations, and deeper respect. Your status rises when people know exactly where you stand and when you stand there with consistency. When you learn to say, this is okay for me and this isn't, you step into a version of yourself that no longer apologizes for having needs, standards, or self-respect. There's a certain heaviness that enters the room when someone is trying too hard to be liked, trying too hard to appear confident, trying too hard to look successful, intelligent, or important. Most people won't say it out loud, but they can feel it. Trying too hard doesn't raise your status. It quietly lowers it because it exposes something you're trying to hide: insecurity. When you exaggerate your achievements, when you force jokes that don't land, when you brag, overshare, or perform confidence instead of embodying it, when you dress, speak, or act in ways meant to impress rather than express, people sense the strain. They see the gap between who you are and who you're trying to be, and that gap is where respect quietly slips away. Authenticity has a weight to it, a groundedness. You don't need to prove anything when you trust yourself. You don't need to decorate your identity when you are at peace with it. But when you perform for approval, you send a message: I don't believe I'm enough as I am. The irony is beautiful. The moment you stop trying so hard, you become more magnetic. People lean in because your energy feels easy, unforced, real. They feel safe around someone who doesn't compete, compare, or showcase their highlight reel every chance they get True confidence whispers, it doesn't chase applause, it doesn't need validation to breathe. It shows up quietly, consistently, and sincerely. When you shift from impressing to expressing, from performance to presence, your status rises without you lifting a finger, because nothing is more impressive than someone who doesn't need to impress at all. One of the quickest ways to lose respect, quietly, almost invisibly, is to refuse responsibility. Blaming others, making excuses, or dodging accountability sends a subtle but clear message: I'm not reliable, I'm not trustworthy, I can't lead my own life. Every time you avoid responsibility, you shrink your influence. People notice, even if they don't say it. They see that when things get tough, you point fingers instead of standing firm. They see that